Okay, let me set my timer. Okay. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Let's frame this debate on what actually needs to be talked about within the rest of this debate, right? It's talking about why people actually need to vote because it is their right to determine who the government of their city or country is, right? And that is something important when we actually want to debate if whether or not it's okay to limit something or not, because limiting something has to have a very justified reason, because we believe that everyone has to have the right to choose who their government is, because that will what implement the laws later on, right? That is why it's okay to maybe limit kids from not voting because they don't understand enough and this does not directly impact them, or we can it's okay to limit prisoners who have already broke the law itself. Therefore we believe their vote cannot be counted for the betterment of this country. So when this kind of things haven't been properly analyzed by the opening government, we demand them to actually answer these kind of explanations, because other than that we believe that there is no clear justification why it's okay to limit these things, right? So the stance in opening opposition is clear. We believe that all citizens of a country are able to have the right to decide the government within their country and their city, right? Because later on, the laws implemented by the candidate who is actually chosen will actually affect to their lives. Well, it will actually affect to maybe their work or their healthcare and everything, right? And that is very important to actually know, right? So the mechanism in opening opposition is we want to stick with the status quo. We believe that everyone, as long as they are a citizen of the country, as long as they are already in the correct age to vote of 17 or relative to each of the countries itself, they are able to go to their local area and they're able to cast their vote, right? Maybe we want to add an extra mechanism here where we want to increase the amount of education towards politics, right? Such as having seminars, having regional mandatory lectures, booklets, and socializations, right? We believe this kind of mechanization is enough to counter the urgency in opening government regarding the lack of education, because this has already also provided education for these people, right? So for these people, that we believe that is enough. But before I would like to proceed, I would like to give two major rebuttals towards the opening government side of the house, right? First is talking about how opening government's urgencies that people have to know who they're voting, basically needing education, why we have to have the test. This is basically their entire case, right? So three responses towards this. First, regarding how we agree that opening government, that citizens need education to have an educated vote. But this test is not the exclusive way. This test is not even the right way, because test means that you have to pass or fail and you have to limit people and everything, right? When the only urgency brought by the opening government is that they have to have education. We believe that the kind of mechanism brought by opening opposition regarding having mandatory regulated seminars and everything is already enough, right? Second response, how then when we've already proven to you it's actually enough and everything, we have proven to you how it's more beneficial in opening opposition, that we're not making any changes to actually limit these kind of things, all right? But my third and last response will be talking about how even if there needs to be a standard where you need to determine whether you have enough knowledge or not, we believe a short yes and no question is enough. We believe that this kind of like existing mechanism is already enough. That's why it is not okay to limit the amount of people to vote, and which is why opening government's entire urgency on education is already been able to be mitigated with opening opposition's mechanism, right? Which is why we believe that their case cannot stand. But towards my second response, how they want my second rebuttal, talking about how they say it's okay to limit people's rights if they bring harm towards a certain thing. But notice how opening government never actually explain what kind of harm actually happens, right? Jargonistically, they just say that, oh, there is harm by these biased decisions. We believe that yes, there are biased decisions, but in the end, there is no actual major society harm towards the citizens itself, right? Because in the end, the majority vote is what wins the election, and there's enough people who to mitigate this kind of bias to actually allow this kind of objective decision to be made. But how then it is more harmful on their side when there is no harm that they're actually preventing? They actually limit people's accessibility to vote. It actually hampers these human rights to actually be able to vote, because it is every citizen's right to actually take their vote. That's why we believe opening government's case is more harmful. But towards my arguments here in opening opposition, I would like to bring two arguments. First, regarding why it's not justified to limit the amount of people to vote. notice how opening government never properly mechanized the test itself, right? So in opening opposition, we believe that it's gonna be a huge test. It's gonna be very big and very serious because it needs to be legit, right? Because if it's any less than that, there won't be any actual measurement, and opening government will not bring any change to status quo. So what it's going to be like, it's going to be very expensive because you need to have the tools, the security, the certification, such as the bar exam, and comparatively to the bar exam of law, or comparatively to English literacy tests like IELTS, right? Those things are very legitimate, but they're also very expensive. But that means that it's also not going to be very accessible to everyone, right? First, because of the price, which means that people from lower socioeconomic classes cannot take it because they cannot afford the test, or they cannot actually afford the educations and the lessons needed to actually pass the test. But from accessibility itself, right? How people from rural areas maybe cannot reach the test that might be held in big cities, or rural areas might not even have the test to begin with, and everything, right? So we believe that this kind of things will hamper the accessibility. It will limit the amount of people who are actually being able to vote, right? Especially when opening government says that if you fail, you have to take the test in the next elections, meaning in that current year's election, you're unable to vote. This means that there's a lot of people who are unable to vote based on those kind of extra limitations set. So why is this not justified, right? When I've already explained to you that the government is the one who creates laws, that shapes people's life, that they're the one who implement laws that can actually determine people's likelihood of living and everything. And they're not, and these people are actually not able to cast the right people. These people are not able to vote the right people to actually create these laws. We believe it's gonna create harm into their lives. Therefore, we have proven to you why it is actually not justified. But second rebuttal is talking about second argument is actually talking about how then this political climate will be very narrow and not diverse, right? When I've already proven to you that there's this limited amount of people who can vote, it means that there's only like a certain group of rich people, a certain majority that can vote, right? It means that it's gonna be due to this lack of diversity of voters. The one who's going to be elected are those who are based on this biased group, such as only white people are able to access and pass the test in the United States because other groups of people cannot afford it, or due to racial discrimination, their processes are hampered and everything. So it's gonna be a very narrow political climate where maybe another white president is elected, where there's no proper diverse representation in the cabinet, because we've seen a lot of multicultural states, example in the US, actually voted for Biden and Kamala Harris, because without this kind of diversity, Trump could have been voted again. Right? We believe this narrow climate is actually very harmful, especially the minorities and the people of lower socioeconomic classes, because they're the one who exclusively needs this kind of government changes. Without the actual proper leaders to actually implement the correct laws, we believe that it's gonna actually cause more harm towards them and everything, right? So in the end of the day, what has opening opposition has told you, right? We have told you that there is no justification in making a test that will limit people's right to voting, but we've also told you how this political climate will be very bad on opening government side. So when this test brings more harm than good, we proudly oppose it. Thank you.